All right. Hello. Good evening, everybody. Sorry to stop all the great conversations happening. All right. Thank you all for being here. We're so excited that everyone in this room is here. It's been a great turnout. And it's our last one of the year. So we have a couple of very exciting presentations to give. Presentation by Mr. Duane Yoslov from Diversified. And we have some exciting awards to present. So we'll be doing all that shortly. Before we get to Duane, we're going to present a couple new members with their certificates. And yeah, we'll go from there. So Duane, if you want to take a seat really quickly before we get going, this might take just a minute. All right. So we're going to start with the fun stuff right off the bat. We have new members with us. Overwhelming, unanimous support to all of our new members. So thank you everybody who voted for them. Our first new member is Mr. Edwin Solano. Edwin has also been one of our AV volunteers this term, so we really appreciate all he's done for the STE this year. Couldn't have survived without him. All right. Next is Mr. Joseph Oliveira. There he is. I get the fun privilege of being with Joe every day at Paramount. So congrats, Joe. No speech, Joe? All right. Next, we have Mr. Bobby Stevens. Congratulations. And last but not least, Mr. Eddie Safarians. Ready? All right. And Lloyd, don't go so far. We have a very special presentation for Lloyd. The board got together behind Lloyd's back and nominated him for life membership. Lloyd has been an STE member since 2002, if our records are correct. And we have a special certificate just for him. And I really want to thank Lloyd. Lloyd is, out of the 2 years I've been president, Lloyd has been one of the senior board members and has been just instrumental in the success of this group. He's one of the most dedicated people I know on this board, and frankly, I think we would have collapsed several times over if it hadn't. So thank you again, Lloyd. Check. We have one last award to give out tonight for Mr. Rafiq Ugassian. Where is Rafiq? There he is. We really wanted to recognize Rafiq. We're giving him the Outstanding Service Award in recognition of exemplary commitment and contribution to the Society of Television Engineers. Rafiq has gone above and beyond in making sure our web stuff and email stuff comes to fruition every week, often with very little notice. And he really goes above and beyond to make sure that things are in order on that front. So thank you so much, Rafiq. Thank you, Rafik. Thank you, Howard. All right, and as Howard and Lloyd both are walking away, I wanted to remind everybody that who didn't know, we just had a board election. If you didn't get the email, come find somebody because your email address must be wrong in the system and we need to fix that. But there was a board election for all the active members and life members to vote on. And so we have an outgoing board and an incoming board. And I want to first acknowledge our outgoing board. We have, first of all, our officers. I want to thank Howard Muzelis, our secretary. Mike Buchanan, our treasurer. Lloyd Ferguson and Bill Hogan, senior board members. Jeff Longbottom, Russ Stacy, and Paul Carey are at large board members. Thank you to the whole outgoing board and officers. You really, truly have made this group possible every day through all the meetings and emails and just dedication to making it happen. So thank you guys. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. So our incoming board, to announce the results of our election, we have Jeff Longbottom returning for a second term or second year. We have Paul Carey returning for a second year. And we have John Svetlik. So really capable hello, check. We have really capable people on the at-large seats on the board. And for our senior board, I've been informed that they met this evening and we have Bill Hogan returning. And Mr. Glenn Thompson. So this board's first and most important priority is to elect or to appoint officer positions. So we have a treasurer, secretary, and president that need appointment. So please help them out. Please volunteer. If they tap you on the shoulder, please say yes. No, I think there's something about term limits. All right. So we've covered all the fun stuff. So with that being said, reminder, our website is st-ca.org. Check it out. I'm sure there'll be updates throughout the summer with the new schedule as the board plans that, and other announcements. Past presentations will find their way there. Bill is pointing at me. No. That was don't see, that's why Bill's on the senior board, because he knows all these tricks. All right. Am I forgetting anything? I'm looking at all the people on the board. Anything left to announce? All right. Without much further ado, Mr. Duane Yoslov from Diversified. Oh, no, I lied. I'm so sorry, Duane. I made you get up twice. Glenn reminded me of our most important tradition, the pass the mic tradition. And that would not be complete without Mr. Bernardo Solano performing those duties.
Thanks. I would like to nominate Laura Jensen. Come on, Laura. You'll be a good president. All right. So I'll be walking around. If you guys have something to share, announcements, please grab the mic away from me. So this table, Eric, congratulations. Any,
Thanks for everyone. Glad to be part of this group, and I will do my best. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome, Eric. Thank you. Laura, hands. All right, Lloyd, congratulations again. All right. All right, any announcements, Joe? No, not yet. Okay. This,
Hey, everyone. First of all, I want to say thanks to doing for 2 years and as well as Lloyd. Big big influence on STE. And thanks everyone. That's all that I've got.
It was COVID. It didn't
Awesome.
count.
anyone else? No? All right. Michael? No? Anyone? Ozzy?
Oh,
Ozzy. Hey. Okay. Puma. Anthony share this table? Nothing? The wait, any announcements you guys gotta make? No? Oh. Plenty tea.
Well, I'd like to say hello to Mr. Haley. Damn you pretty. Big Bad George. I mean, damn you pretty. You are pretty, right?
George,
But anyway,
George, where do you
okay.
work?
Shameless
Where do you work?
self-promotion. I am a salesman. I am the first salesman
Dave
member
Carroll?
of the STE, and I'm also the first salesman president. So I just want to let you know, as a salesman, that we have just inked a deal with Artel. All of our old people here know Artel.
All people.
Hyperdigital now representing Artel. We're doing fiber, of course, but we're also doing some JPEG 2000 XS in open gear. So for anybody who's looking for some JPEG 2000 XS, put it in your and take your 4K video and smash it down, and every frame is a frame. I remember Big Jim doing a JPEG 2000 present at the HPA in the desert, going, JPEG 2000 is so good because every frame is a frame. You don't get pixel blocking. You don't get macro blocking. How's that for us? And I'd also like to welcome but you should invite Ken and Lano Solano.
Is is there an engineer in house? Tom? Chair? Puma? Oh, George? All right, hold on. Puma. Okay, I'll come back to you, George.
Glenn, you're funny. You're funny, Glenn. George Hale, Advanced Systems Group. Just want to let you guys
what
know,
company?
always hiring managed services folks. We're looking for a sound engineer in London. Also looking for a network engineer in Los Angeles. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, George. Puma.
This is damn good cake.
Yeah. I do miss the apple pie, by the way. But, Jeff.
So hello, there we go. First thing is, thanks, Eric, for volunteering to be president again next year. Much appreciated. All those in favor, say aye. Done. Board, well done. Seriously, you want to be president to follow this man, please let us know. Now on the Rick Gross just volunteered. So on the Diversified side, I want to announce that Amazon opened their HQ2 facility, which is in Alexandria, Virginia. And Diversified, if you see any of the press releases or any of the online announcements of HQ2, which was hosted by Jeff Bezos himself, we did all the specialty AV, so all the video walls, all the production, everything that you see in those press releases was done by Diversified. So one of the few times I want to brag about Diversified, we nailed it on that one, and very exciting. It was a project I was personally involved in. Again, thanks, Eric, for volunteering for being president next year, and nice job the past two.
Anyone else? Anyone else? No? All right, back to you, Eric.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernardo. Right, check, check, check. There we go. Duane, I promise I won't fake you out again. We're really, really excited to have you. Can we get a round of applause for Duane?
All right, let's see if we get this thing working. Hello. Thank you for inviting me to come and present. It's really great to come back to LA and see so many familiar faces and meet some new faces along the way as well. It was great to see Mr. Glenn Thompson, who tried heroically to get me drunk before getting up here, but unsuccessfully. There's several full glasses of alcohol and whiskey sitting in front of my desk. So, it was great to see George Hamilton's here, and I'm gonna be talking about a really unique project, but one of the coolest projects I ever worked on was with George Hamilton at NBC. We put in what was the first regularly broadcast high definition television production at the time, and that was circa 1999. George, was it? Help me out here. 2000. 99. Yeah, it was rocket science back then, truly. But we figured it out. It was a good team. And the reason I'm here tonight is talk about the Fox Sports Jewel event production and distribution system. It was a system in July of 2021. Kevin Callahan from Fox Television came to Diversified and was looking for a partner to help him figure out how he was going to produce for Fox Television what were three of the jewel events that the network broadcasts. And it was the FIFA World Cup, the Super Bowl, and the Women's World Cup, which is upcoming in Sydney, Australia. And Kevin, ironically, was our very first customer for Diversified in the West. When we got the office established in Santa Clara, California, our first customer was Game Creek Video. And Kevin was director of engineering for Game Creek at the time, and we built their first two high definition production trucks, which ironically were for Fox NFL, primarily Fox NFL and Yankee Entertainment Network. So the trucks were Yankee and Patriot. I learned recently that Patriot is still on the road from 2004, making high definition pictures for, I think, the National Fishing League, something like that, bass fishing. So our first task for Fox Television was really to figure out whether or not this project was feasible or not. Typically, you would do a remote like this with a truck like everyone else does. Looking at the logistics of getting in and out of Qatar, they determined that coming in by sea or by land was out of the picture, and that the only way to get assets in and out reliably was going to be by air. And thus they started looking at the feasibility of a flight case system. And what makes this system and the project unique isn't that it's a flight case system. There are plenty of flight cases out there. But it's the way that this one was designed in order to rapidly deploy, rapidly pack, and be able to do the largest productions in the world in a matter of hours. And if anyone, I'm sure all of you have experience with putting a flight case system with IO panels on the back and, you know, hours and hours of like hooking up interconnect cables and faxing it out and making sure that everything works. This system deployed in 5 hours, and the core of the system was up and running in that amount of time. It was a couple of dozen MPO cables, MPO fiber cables to interconnect the pallets together, and away we go. So that's sort of the story of how we got going on the project. We had to see if it was financially feasible. The challenge was to build something that was able to be loaded onto airplane cargo and do that quickly and on a large scale with redundancy. So we endeavored to take on a feasibility study where we put together a statement of probable costs, put together the architecture of the system, and select partners that would work with us on this. At the time, ST 2110 and IP Video was established, but there were only really a couple of leading players at the time. I think Lavo and Evertz were really at the center of the partners at the time that were leading the way, with others on their heels in terms of introducing technology. And EVS was one of the partners that had really not established themselves. Everyone knows them for replay, and when it comes to software-defined networks, they were a long shot in the US anyway. They've been deploying systems in Europe. We ran an RFP, really an RFI, to evaluate technology, and at the end of it, selected EVS core partner for software-defined network to be the core technology for the system. As the feasibility study wrapped up and we put costs together, Fox approved the project, and we moved rapidly into the build. We started this 18 months before the first broadcast for the World Cup, and had a lot of work to do in order to get things built out, designed, commissioned, and deployed in time for that first broadcast. And it was a race from that first word go on the project until we got things settled in Qatar. And I will go through the slides, but I'm better at just telling the story of how we got there prior to getting into the details of what we actually did in picture form. Once we started construction or started design, we had to figure out where we were going to build this thing. And Fox really wanted us to build this at FS1 in Charlotte, and they could use that as their test site. That's one of their core sites for production and distribution domestically. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources in Charlotte to put this together. So we talked to Kevin about the idea of building it out in our Burbank facility. We had just recently completed the NFL network, where we had a test system there, which was the core of what we built over at SoFi Stadium in Hollywood Park. And we had all the power and air conditioning that we needed to be able to build this system out. and test it in the shop before we went anywhere. So we used that as our fabrication facility. We had all the resources we need in terms of mechanical and cable fabrication and everything else that we would need in terms of vendor support right here in Los Angeles. Starting from the ground up, the first thing we need to do is figure out how we're going to get an FAA flight certified pallet that could load onto an airplane and fly. Our first stop, and you can see in this slide, is that plane over on the left was to get it to Charlotte. And that was no easy task. We needed to fit essentially 20 racks on 4 pallets that would tie together and make a single system. And that pallet had to be able to support the weight and the power distribution and be certified by the FAA and go through all the shock isolation to make sure that the equipment got there safely. A lot of thought and design just went into what looks to the, you know, the common eye as a piece of steel. But there's a lot of technology built into just the platform itself. The racks are mounted to that, and the racks had to fit within the belly bay of an airplane. So typically you would just stack flight cases, and in order to minimize the number of interconnections on the system, we designed the system with hinged racks that could fold over onto themselves. And I'll get more into that when I go through the pictures. So that the racks themselves would fold down onto the pallet, strap down, and fit into the belly, and away they go. So that was one of the big challenges for us. And once we had that all designed and perfected, and you know, there's a lot of weight in those, so we devised gin pole rigs that actually support the rack down through the lowering process, so we're not, you know, putting people in physical peril of when they're collapsing the racks, or the equipment itself, which has to get there safely. And we perfected all that. We brought in all our vendors. We had tremendous vendor support from our core partners on this, Grass Valley, Riedel, EBS, in the commissioning, testing, and faxing of the system. Once we had everything up and running satisfactorily, we chartered airplanes to fly the system to Charlotte, and we did the final test and fax in Charlotte with the system. From Charlotte, everything loaded onto 2 airplanes, and the way the system was designed, it was actually every other pallet that was split between 2 airplanes for redundancy, so that literally if a plane went down, we'd still be able to do a broadcast. So got everything into Qatar. It was, we had one site that was in the convention center, and that was adjacent to the host broadcaster where we took all our feeds from. And then second remote site on the studio out on the water. And so those 2 systems had redundancy within the system for each other, and then supported the studio operations as well. Really a magnificent amount of technology that went out on an airplane in country and set up very rapidly. The core system itself has enough bandwidth to support 3200 1080p 60p signals bidirectionally simultaneously. You couldn't do this in an SDI system without having an aircraft carrier full of racks. In the early 2000s, I was a project manager on the Sydney Olympics, and we devised at the time, which was what we called ribs, racks in a box, where we pulled 20 racks on a platform very similar to what we did here into a sea land container. But it took 10 of those just to get, what was probably the equivalent of a 288 squared router onto a ship and across an ocean. So really magnificent what ST 2110 and that technology of IP video brought in terms of capability. And what we ended up building wasn't really a remote production facility, but it was a remote data center, because most of the production or large parts of the production were happening remotely here on the Pico lot and in Phoenix at the Fox facilities for graphics and replay and large portions of the broadcast. So it really was an extension of the data center that exists in Phoenix and in Charlotte and in Los Angeles, and it was all tied together, and they could move a tremendous amount of data all at once. So that's more or less the story of how it came together. It's from there, we broke it down, and it had to do what is, I believe the largest broadcast in the world, which is Super Bowl, and did that 3 weeks later. After that, we had a chance to catch our breath, take the system offline in Phoenix, make some modifications and changes to support Women's World Cup, and the Eagle has landed in Sydney. Our team is on site putting that system together right now in order to support the Sydney Women's World Cup. Actually, it's all over. It's all over Australia and New Zealand. Qatar was really unique in that all the venues were within a 45-minute drive of each other. Anyway, I'll walk you through some of the pictures that we have from the project and getting started. This is a good slide in terms of getting an understanding of how this thing all tied together. There were 9 stadiums. Each of those stadiums needed to tie back to the core system for communications and obviously video and audio back and forth. I'll show you a little bit more about the venue kits that were deployed to each of the stadiums. Those tied back to both the studio, which had 20 racks across 4 pallets, similar to the IBC, which was 20 racks on 4 pallets. The systems, while they were not identical, they had the same capabilities in terms of distribution. The studio side obviously supported a lot more in terms of production capability. All of that was taking feeds from the host feeds and the host broadcaster. None of the production in venue was done by Fox Television. The way FIFA works is they produce all of the content and distribute to all the broadcasters that have purchased media rights. There were, I believe it was 92 separate media rights holders. All of those media rights holders were housed within what was the IBC and fed from this master control, which was HBC. And then obviously transmission in Tempe, Arizona, where Fox has its sports production facility. Here's a picture of the racks themselves in the design and development phase. You can see there's like one device loaded into the swinging portion of the rack that we're investigating. You guys might recognize Joe Cafaro there. Some of you are familiar with that guy. the racks were a big part of it. It was, we had the talk of, does it make sense to make a hinged custom rack to do this? Why would we do that? And at the end of the day, it really was a brilliant approach. And it wasn't, it was a team that came up with the concept, but Fox deserves a lot of credit for visualizing how this would work and how to do this efficiently. In particular, this guy right here, Doug McGee, was a key team member for Fox Television in working with the Diversified team. Here you see a picture of, after we actually have everything built out and loaded, like, how are we going to lift this thing? This is a lot of weight, how do we do this without putting, our installation technicians and engineers in peril? And, had a whole team. We ended up building a winch system, which tied into the pallet down here and to the edge of the rack, and we would actually winch the upper half of the rack up into place on deploying. So some of the team members, Walt Thomas, Aaron Stevens, these two guys are in Sydney right now working on the system. Lucas Pierce, who is one of our young engineers. I recruited Lucas 2 years ago out of UCSB. I compete against his father sailing. And he had just graduated from UCSB and with a physics major and had no idea what he wanted to do. I was like, you should come do television. And he jumped right in, and I've got to say, he is top notch. He's one of our go-to engineers on the team now. He was deep into every certification he could get his hands on at the time. I threw him into an AR environment right out of the gate, and he became an expert to the point where he ran the facility for one of our clients for 6 months. Mark Gerard, another key team member, he's down in Sydney right now with our engineering team. He and Lucas are managing that, as is. Unfortunately, Ty had a family emergency, had to cancel his participation in the Sydney event. But I've worked with Ty for a long time. I remember his first gig as an installer was Television Games Network in Culver City in a used car lot. Anyone remembers that project? This is a wide shot of all the systems, really. So you've got on the left here, these are the venue packs that were deployed to each of the venues. We use a resistor code to color code the flight cases. We thought that was very clever. Here is the IBC on the left, and on the right, we have our studio setup and configuration. This is the temporary facility that we put together in Charlotte. We had obviously an event facility put up as a temporary to house the systems and be able to do the final test and fax. A couple of interesting moments with it was in fall of 2022, so there was hurricanes on the East Coast. And when you basically have, $50 million worth of hardware under a tent, you get a little nervous. It wasn't 50 million, but it was somewhere between there and zero. And this is, you do need some specialized lifts in order to move these pallets. They are not light in that steel platform. And this is us loading into the truck for transport to the airport. Everything had was crated once it was loaded and strapped down onto the pallet. And that was a key to getting things there safely. It was a good shot of everything loaded up in the crates and ready to go. One of the unique features of the flight pallet itself is these casters right here. We could use those. You could, with just a couple of guys, move one of these pallets on casters, and so long as you're on flat ground, roll it around pretty much anywhere. Once we got to site, obviously you don't want those things rolling around, so there's jacks built into the pallets that supports the pallet. You lift them up just enough to slide the casters out, and then we have isolation springs that we use to protect the gear from vibration and moving. Here's everything packed up, ready to go, pre-flight. And this is once we deployed on site in Qatar. One of the things you'll notice is the cabling between the top half and the bottom half of the rack is actually laced in so that it's on the outside. And this enabled us to fold the rack without uncabling anything. That loop ends up inside the bottom rack once these are folded in half. And a lot of thought went into, not only the physical platform, but how it was wired and the functionality of being able to reuse this system over and over again. As I said, the systems were split, not necessarily by studio and IBC, but really by odd and even rack. Odd racks were primary, even racks were redundant, or even pallets, I should say. And so they were split between two airplanes and flown in country. This the studio site for what became the Fox studio. Some really iconic shots. They actually rented some of the I forget what they called the sailboats, their dhows that would rest at anchor so that they would be perfectly in the shot from the studio. So none of them were designed by Buddy Melges, but interestingly enough, security is a primary concern for Fox at these events, and there's always a contingency plan. And although those boats were rented for the beauty shot, we'll call it, they also served as a contingency plan in case of emergency to get their talent from the studio away and to safety. So I thought that was an interesting fact. These are shots of the studio site, and this is right on the wharf. These are temporary structures that were put up to house the studio facility. You can see us setting up the pallets here in these other two sites here. Of course, you can't produce content from a rack room, so once these were set up, we had temporary production facilities that were both at the IBC and the main studio. This is an audio room, both your primary feed and secondary audio mix venue and for studio. There's young Lucas Pierce pretending to actually punch some buttons. Looks good for the pictures though. And we had some visits and beauty shots for the media. Alexi Lalas, I'm sure some of you know who are soccer fans, football fans, came into the IBC and took this shot, which is really kind of cool. This is a shot of those venue packs completed, ready to deploy. So they were all tested at the IBC prior to moving out to the venue. I thought this shot was amazing because all of you have been to NAB, I'm sure, at some point in time. So you're looking at a building that's the equivalent of the South Hall, and all of these structures are built temporarily inside the convention center. And so it was a city inside the convention center. And all of that cabling is temporary. All these, chill water pipes that are running through the facility, these are all temporary and all put together by the Qatari government to support the World Cup and the IBC. Staggering. And this was the nerve center for the host broadcaster, where every single feed came in and out and was distributed to each of the media rights holders. SDI was still the primary and mezzanine level distribution to each of the media rights holders. So everything came in on SDI and then was converted to SD 2110. NEP was a partner on the host broadcast. So they were part of the team. But I'm not really sure who at HBC they work with in terms of the actual design and deployment. I don't know a lot about that side other than the fact that NEP partnered to make that happen. This gives you a little bit of perspective on what each of these looks like once they're set up and deployed. As I mentioned, you can see going across, there's very little cabling interconnecting and tying these together. It's really 12-channel fiber cassettes that run between these, and that's it. Everything else is primarily internal to the pallets and the racks themselves. And I think this is the final shot. We actually had some fun when we got there as well. Although we didn't have a lot of days off in Qatar, when we did, we got out there and tried to experience it as much as we could. This was kind of one of our wrap dinners here with the team that was on site at the time. This the thumb and the golden thumb. It's at the bazaar. Drawing a blank. It's the souk, El Souk, which is the market, open air market for in the center of Qatar. And they call it the thumb because Qatar sticks off like a thumb from Saudi Arabia. And it is the golden thumb because there's a lot of money there. Some falconing is very big in Qatar. There's in the souk, there's a whole city block of falconers and live falcons that you can go in and learn how to train. Then we even went to the Falcon Hospital at one point in time. I didn't partake in the camel rides, but the team had a good time doing it. Mark here trying on his cashmere headdress there. I posted this one on LinkedIn. This is me and Adam Salkin. Adam and I have been doing this a long time, working on projects together. Adam was a brand new engineer from the BBC out of the UK and worked with me when George Hamilton here on that Tonight Show high def project back in 1999. If I were going to title it again, I'd call it, two Jews in an Arab bar in it, two Jews in an Arab country at an Irish bar listening to a Cuban chick band, because that's what we were doing, and it was really quite something. Alcohol was a big part of the project in a lot of ways because it was very media focused. There was no booze whatsoever in the venues. They had made an agreement to allow for beer sales in the venue and then retracted just prior to the event, which became a very big deal. Fox somehow negotiated a deal to have a bar actually in the housing quarters for the engineering and production staff. So Fox ran their own bar. It might be the first time in history that the broadcaster had a bar going, but actually negotiated with the Supreme Council to make that happen. For people on the road, alcohol is a big part of it. We all know that. We've spent time on the road, but it was quite an adventure. And the Super Bowl was really a treat to do after the grind that leading up to in Qatar was. Not a lot of pictures of that to share with you, but that's the story of how we got there. I'm sure there's some questions out there. So what's this?
Check. Does anybody have questions for Duane? We can pass the mic so our friends on Zoom can hear and everything. Or yeah, Duane, if you would just repeat the question as people ask them so that people on Zoom can hear.
Oh, sure. Can I hear them
Uh,
or see them?
well, for the people in the house. Any questions for Duane? All right.
It must have been a great presentation. There's not a single question. I will say that really amazing. The team at Fox worked, put a lot of effort into documenting the process of getting there, and they submitted for a sports Emmy and were awarded a sports Emmy for outstanding team studio. So as part of the Fox team, they were very gracious in naming the team members from Diversified who supported the event, and each of them will receive an Emmy as well. So outstanding. What wasn't ready and what will we do different today? In the time frame that we had to execute the project, I don't think that we would change fundamentally how we approach the project. I think that in terms of testing and commissioning the system, everything went really well. The pitfalls came in into some of the finer details of connectivity on a global scale, and spending more time focusing on those global interconnections and trying to fax those out earlier. Some of those were just what that means is we had primary and redundant geodiverse 100 gig links to each of the remote sites that data center was connected to. So we were connected to both Charlotte and to Phoenix, and some of that connectivity became challenging, we'll say. So spending more time on focusing on that connectivity and ensuring both primary and diverse paths were operational. Yeah, I would say that that's where the biggest challenges came in. We certainly had our challenges in commissioning, in that you know, EVS had not deployed a network of this scale anywhere close to this size previously, and they learned a lot along the way. And I've got to hand it to them. They supported Fox and Diversified on the project tremendously. Without the support of their engineers and developers, we couldn't pull it off. Lowell Engineering. Yeah, Lowell Engineering. It was, we investigated a number of options in terms of building custom racks, including, custom cabinet builders like, Laguna. And Lowell was far and away the right choice. We spent a lot of time on the PDUs and power distribution and power monitoring. The power distribution. I don't recall the name of the company that provided the power. Jim, you might know the company. Who is it? No, I mean the power distribution, like on site. They actually have a power company that did all the power conditioning and feed to the system itself, Jeff. That's what we're talking about. We did go underground. There was no satellite, no satellite involved. It was all terrestrial broadcast, terrestrial distribution.
There was a hand in the back.
We took a hit. We took a hit. I was there. It had to do with what I was talking about, is primary and diverse paths, and having those circuits fully tested prior to the event. So it failed over to, we lost our primary circuit, we failed over to our backup, and the backup wasn't there. So that's what happened.
Cool. One last question over here.
These are all rented occasional circuits. Yeah.
Cool. Duane, if anybody has any more questions or wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
You can always find me on LinkedIn. I'm on the Diversified website as well. I lead our corporate enterprise team with Jeff Longbottom here. So if you don't know how to find me, Jeff can always be in touch with me.
All right, let's give one last round of applause for Duane.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Duane. All right, all right. I think that kind of concludes our evening here, and concludes our season. Can somebody turn off the mic, please? Well, I got to say, it really truly has been an honor to be the president for these past 2 years, and to serve on the board before that. And I look forward to all that the new leadership team is going to do. I know great things are in store for the ST, and it's in great hands. So I look forward to seeing you all. We're going on a break for 2 months for our summer hiatus, and we'll see you all in September. So thank you all. Drive safe, and we'll see you next time.